to this fighting Pokemon throwdown.
And there we do see Ross. I mean, this is one of the most accomplished players in the game right here. He has won countless tournaments. He has qualified for every single World Championships in the history of the Pokemon TCG.
Is he now the only player that's done that? I know every year we lose a couple. He's definitely one of maybe two, maybe three tops.
A handful of players, yeah. And also something else to note, these two players are very familiar with each other. They are friends in real life. They probably even test together, so they probably have played this matchup a few times.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've seen both of them mess with Donphan before in the past. And we have Ross opening up actually with that ace spec we're just talking about. It's Computer Search's last stand, but that doesn't mean it's a bad one. That's just such a great card.
Yeah, and this is actually going to be a pretty strange matchup. Of course, both players running fighting-type decks. Ross going for that heavy-hitting Primal Groudon deck where you just kind of load up that one big attacker and go from there. Simon, on the other hand, running no Pokemon EX at all. One of the big things about Primal Groudon is it really preys on other Pokemon EX since Gaia Volcano can do so much damage. It really just, it's a slow deck, but then when it sets up, it gets these 2 prize knockouts each turn. Ross won't have that luxury in this matchup. He'll have to knock out 6 individual Pokemon, and Primal Groudon can struggle with that.
Yeah, that's really difficult, especially when you consider things like Simon's Hawlucha, my absolute favorite Pokemon in this format. He's back for some more Flying Press action. For 1 energy, he deals 60 damage to a Pokemon EX, so sometimes that could be a limitation. Not against Ross, though. For the most part, he's going to have to eventually attack with his Groudon EX while they're in the active spot. That's a real easy 1 energy commitment.
Yeah, another thing here is we'll see a lot of Robo Substitute. Both players actually using 4 of that little item card that can kind of play as a Pokemon, be in the active spot, and won't give up a prize card. So this matchup I would expect to be a pretty long one, very back and forth. A lot of decisions will have to be made.
Oh boy. So speaking of RoboSub, there's one down. I'm sure Ross would love to have RoboSub into the active position as quickly as possible. Just prevent Simon from adding any kind of pressure. Hawlucha cannot knock out a RoboSubstitute. But yeah, it's just an item card. It has 30 HP, but it gives up 0 prizes when you knock it out. And both these players do run those as walls.
Yeah, and for those of you watching, feel free to use the hashtag #PlayPokemon if you want to get involved here. Maybe your tweet will get featured on the stream. But for now, looks like Ross got a pretty strong opening. He has 3 Groudon EX on the board, gets that strong energy and a hard charm. This is probably his ideal start.
Yeah, anything you could do to sort of protect the Groudon that has the energies is a good idea. While it does, you will have to eventually end your turn and Primal Evolve. So off to a pretty strong start on this Groudon. And as soon as he does Primal Evolve, you become safe. Wow, triple subs.
Wow. Yeah, not wasting any time getting into the Robo Substitute battle. Both these players are going to be using Robo Substitute a little differently. Oh, Simon actually going for the quick Lysander. Wow, right out the gates. We see a big contrast in turns. Ross's first turn was very slow and methodical and, got this big setup. And Simon's is going to drop a Lysander, and I'm just going to attack.
Wow, yeah. Why not? This is actually a strong play. One, we're mentioning, Ross needs 1 more turn to Primal Evolve, or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Become the Primal Groudon. When you are Primal Groudon, you get the Omega Barrier, which would prevent you from being pulled up from Lysander. However, now that he's up in the active spot, it's not like he's retreating very easily. That last Groudon retreated with a Float Stone, which is your Pokemon tool card, but he's already got the Hard Charm attached, so you don't really have that as an option. Primal Evolving at this point is useless if you don't have a switch card, because it's just going to be stuck in the active spot. Now this one has to soak up the damage, and it does usually only function on 4 energy attacks, so it's quite a bit of a commitment before this Groudon can start attacking.
Yeah, and even if Ross does get a switch and then Primal Groudon EX, at least you got a big chunk of damage on that Groudon before it comes up and attacks you. The worst feeling is when there's a full HP, 240 HP Primal Groudon EX with a hard charm staring you down. Donphan and Hawlucha don't do a ton of damage.
Speaking of Switch and Primal Groudon EX, that is exactly what Karina can pull out of Ross's deck.
Yeah, I mean, Karina is just a great supporter for fighting-type decks. Get to search out a fighting-type Pokemon and an item card. Ross grabs the 2 he needs here, And I'll be interested to see if he has an energy as well. If he does, that'll again be a pretty perfect turn for him.
Yeah, switch out, throw up the sub again, didn't get knocked out, so he still has those. There's his energy. That's pretty much all you can hope for. He Primal Evolves, which does end your turn. However, now it has Omega Barrier active. I think I saw a second Lysander in Simon's hand, but he cannot play it again to pull Primal Groudon up.
Yeah, if he wanted to, he could pull up one of the other Groudon EX on the bench, try to soften one of those up. These Groudon decks don't run a lot of switching cards, just the Float Stone, a Switch, maybe an Escape Rope. But oh man, that's actually a really, really bad Professor Juniper for Simon. Had to discard 2 of his 4 Donphan. That's not what he wanted to see.
No, one of the best things this deck can do, as we mentioned, is it only gives up 1 prize per knockout. It doesn't run any Pokemon EX. And Donphan is one of the hardier of those Pokemon that aren't EXs. I'm sure he would love to cycle through 4 Donphan in a full game.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But it looks like he'll have to rely pretty heavily on Hawlucha in this game instead, which isn't a bad plan, but I'm sure he wishes he could use Donphan a little bit more. Still no Fanpy on the board either, so things not going as well for Simon.
Yeah, I mean, you got to get Fanpy down first to become a Donphan. Donphan actually does have a very powerful slow attack, similar to Primal Groudon's, and it can perhaps take down a Primal Groudon, but you have to get the Donphan out first and start committing energy to it.
Right, and looks like Ross will get a second Hard Charm into play on that other Groudon EX, and then plays the Versus Seeker for Professor Juniper, drawing a fresh hand of 7.
Pretty good movement so far, considering usually Ross's deck won't run anything like a Shaman, draw extra cards, just rely on the supporters, but he's had a pretty steady stream of them so far.
Yeah, that is actually an interesting point on both decks. We see Shaman EX in almost everyone's deck nowadays, and neither player is running one. Both players using Karina instead to set up their fighting-type Pokemon and saying, you know what, I don't want to put Shaman EX on the board because, well, that's just a liability that gives up 2 prizes to my opponent.
Yeah, one theme we've seen in the Pokemon trading card game as of late are cards that are really tools to help out one specific type in the trading card game. Fighting is a big one. It has these things like Strong Energy to give it extra damage, Karina to give it exclusive search, Fighting Stadium, and speaking of Karina, there's another one.
Yeah, so Simon will now play his own Karina. Of course, Simon is a big fan of those full art and gold cards, so he's going to play his full art Karina, search out probably a Fanpy, and then some item card. Big item card for Simon is actually going to be Focus Sash. He does run 2 of those. That will prevent his Donphan from being knocked out in 1 hit, so we might see that as well.
Yeah, if you can get a Donphan and Focus Sash, that is extremely strong. I don't think Ross runs any way to remove the Sash. I also don't think he runs any way to get like a simple 2-hit knockout. He'll have to do complete overkill, like 200 damage, 100 damage, back to back, something like that.
Yeah, and Ross actually did miss an opportunity on his last turn. Maybe the first small little thing he didn't get going his way. He could have used his turn to get a second Primal Groudon EX in play. I'm sure he would have loved to do that so he doesn't have to waste a future turn, but wasn't able to find it.
One interesting thing I'm noticing, Ross is also running like the lower end of Mega Turbos. Just thinking like, oh, maybe he could get one online with the Mega Turbo if he had like a Fighting Energy in the discard pile. But sort of content to play this slow game.
Yeah, so we do see 2 Fanpy now down for Simon. Gets the Focus Sash. So even if Ross did have a Lysander and brought up that Fanpy, he wouldn't be able to knock it out. He would survive with 10 HP. The Focus Sash gets discarded, but that's fine. Donphan is going to be a super annoying card to deal with since you can do that spinning turn attack, switch into Robo Substitute, and then force your opponent to have a Lysander. But even if they do and target your Donphan, they can't even get a prize card for it. So Ross is going to need extreme patience in this matchup.
Yeah, Focus Sash Donphan is one of the most annoying things in the Pokemon trading card game. It just has so much going for it. It's one of the very few Pokemon that has an attack that allows you to deal the damage, then switch to the bench. We've seen that strategy be viable in the Pokemon trading card game forever. It just always depends if there's a strong enough attacker. And it turns out, while Donphan is a pretty old card in terms of how far back this legal format goes, it pairs extremely well with these new fighting tools.
Right, so we see another Professor Juniper. Notably, Ross discarding a Versus Seeker there. We might need some of those in the future to reuse those Lysander but looks like he really couldn't find any energy cards, and we know how much energy drops are important for such a slow deck like Primal Groudon. You can't afford to lose any tempo.
Right. Once the one Primal Groudon drops, if you don't have another one ready to go, you have to play the slow game all over again. It's pretty hard to recover.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see if Ross does find the fourth energy. Does he go ahead and charge forward with Primal Groudon, or is he going to be more patient? Maybe try to power up a second one before he starts attacking.
Yeah, it's how valuable is knocking out this Hawlucha in the active position versus maybe only committing your attacks toward knocking out the Donphan? I don't know.
Yeah, so there we go. There we do see the second Primal Groudon EX. I think that answers our question. Ross will sit back and be patient here. There's no reason to really go forward and knock out a Hawlucha doing ridiculous amounts of damage to knock out a 70 HP Pokemon when you don't have a backup attacker ready to go.
So we do see our first Donphan drop down. Did Simon just discard a Robosub?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a style play right there. Just style. At first I was like, what position would he want to do that? He's about to spinning turn into. Okay. Oh, right.
Yeah, as you can see on that Robo Substitute card, it says at any time during your turn you may discard this card from play. So Simon was about to discard his hand anyway, just discards Robo Substitute and kind of gives Ross a smile and says, I will play down another Robo Substitute.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Now he's going to be probably walling with that Robo Sub. And we're going to see, was that second Donphan, or the two Donphan being discarded, how is that going to impact Simon? Because the one Donphan he has right now is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, and again, you don't get a prize when you knock out a Robo Substitute, so does spinning turn, gets the knockout, but can't take a prize card for it. It's really going to be kind of a war of attrition here. See who can break through the walls of those Robo Substitutes first, and then we'll probably start seeing some prize cards taken.
It's interesting, we saw Simon actually put up the Hawlucha. Is he just trying to save his Robo Substitutes for later when he can frustrate Ross a little bit more?
I think so, yeah.
I think maybe Simon realizes Ross probably isn't going to attack. He's trying to build up two Primal Groudon over time, and so if he doesn't attack and you have Robo Sub active, you just have to discard.
Right.
So by throwing up Hawlucha, it's like, hey, Ross, you have to attack now. Otherwise, I just got a free turn, and I didn't even have to waste a Robo-Sub.
Yeah, I think until Ross starts attacking, this is the better move. Send up Hawlucha since you can retreat for free. Your Robo Substitutes are limited. You've already discarded one. No need to unnecessarily discard another one.
Makes enough sense to me. And meanwhile, Ross is slowly going to see his Robo-Subs be depleted by spinning turn.
Yeah, but if he can get an energy attachment every turn, and oh man, that's one of the best combos with Robo Substitute. It gets knocked out, so you can play teammates. Even though your opponent doesn't take a prize card, they did knock out one of your Pokemon, so you can use teammates to search for any two cards and put them into your hand.
What a powerful card. We've seen similar implementations of this effect in cards like Twins. We haven't seen a ton of teammates, but it really is a great single copy card that you can play, and then Versus Seeker. But yeah, even if one of your Robo-Subs were knocked out, you do get the teammates effect. He can search for any two cards.
Yeah, and it's actually really frustrating to play against because Primal Groudon has Omega Barrier, which means you can't Lysander and bring it out, which means you're pretty regularly forced to knock out a Robo Substitute for no prize. And not only that, it lets your opponent search for two cards. So it's just, this Primal Groudon deck just gives such control over games.
Yeah, you force them to play at your tempo, and you also can't do anything about it. Once the primals are dropped, like you even saw turn one, Simon saw oh, I have to take this opportunity. Let's Lysander up the Groudon before it becomes primal. It's still sitting with that first attack damage, but if they can hit the bench and then primal evolve, you can't pull them back up. They are sort of stuck there until Ross decides, I'm going to put it into the active spot.
And now Ross actually puts down a Landorus EX with a strong energy. I'm surprised to see that, but I think he might be trying to go for some hammerhead play. He could soften up the Donphan on the bench. But no, he's actually just going to retreat to a Robo Substitute and pass. And
triple.
Yeah.
Oh, baby, a triple.
Triple Primal Groudon. Wow.
Two of those are full arts. One of them is not. But those are all three the same Primal Groudon EX card on Ross's side of the field.
Wow. Yeah, I'm actually surprised that Ross put that Landorus EX on the bench. It could be Lysandered out at this point and brought into the active spot, and Donphan can start attacking it, but looks like Simon does not have Lysander this turn, has to play an N.
Yeah, the Landers is interesting. Like you said, it can soften up so that you can hit through the Focus Sash.
Right.
Focus Sash only works if you go from full HP to 0 HP in a single attack. I guess it could also pick off a Robo Sub. Although, actually, now I'm thinking about it, the Mr. Mime's in play.
Yeah, Ross did have Silent Lab, so it could go past Mr. Mime, but Simon did counter with that Fighting Stadium to stop that from happening.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Does he have more than one Silent Lab to go? I guess he does have a couple to go, so it could become viable again.
Yeah, we see Silent Lab be a pretty popular stadium choice for Primal Groudon. There we see the quick retreat, spinning turn, switch back into Hawlucha.
Yeah, you'll see that a lot. And while it isn't the most exciting attack on Donphan, it's just 1 energy, 40, switch. That's a pretty big deal when you have like a free retreater or some kind of wall that you can just move from. And meanwhile, this Donphan is getting a lot of energy. We might see a wreck sometime in the future.
Yeah, wreck is the big attack of Donphan. If you have a stadium card in play, discard it and do a bunch more damage. That's really your big way to close out games. Since, spinning turn, sure, you can wear things down slowly, but eventually you run out of things to put up. You run out of Robo Substitute, and eventually you need that one last big hit, and Wreck does provide that.
And while he did have to discard 2 Donphan, we do say Simon's got 2 on his field now. So the dream is you get enough time with these spinning turns to power up a second Donphan ready to go after the first. But you do want the first ready to go just so that you can drop a wreck at any time.
And wow, a second energy going on to Lander CX and a Focus Sash on Ross's side as well. Looks like he may be powering up for a Land's Judgment at some point just to give him an alternate attacker that takes fewer energy than Primal Groudon would.
Yeah, and Focus Sash does buy Ross, I guess, an extra turn. It saves him from like a really huge wreck for 2 prizes. But I'd say more often than not, it'll probably be hit by like a softening spinning turn and then a knockout attack.
Yeah, something that's becoming a concern on Ross's side is how much energy he actually has to work with. There are 11 total energy in his deck. He has 6 in play right now. I believe 1's in the discard as well. If he uses all of them efficiently, I believe he can power up another Primal Groudon EX, but if there's one prize or anything like that, he might be in trouble, might not be able to power up enough attackers to win.
Oh, and we do see another swap of the stadiums. Silent Lab's in play. That turns off abilities on basic Pokemon. So with Silent Lab in play, Mr. Mime no longer has that bench barrier. Ross could now, and he is going to, retreat in and Hammerhead and damage the bench.
Yeah, and I think the target is probably going to be Donphan since it has Focus Sash. You just kind of break the Focus Sash, prevent it from working. Pretty smart play from both sides so far.
Yeah, Donphan essentially has a useless now item card attached to it.
Yeah, pretty much.
He has no way, I think, to heal back up to full HP.
Nope, he is not running the Pokemon Center lady that Ross is.
So, this Donphan is no longer, I guess, invulnerable to a single attack. I guess you could say it took its first attack.
Yeah.
But now, it's a weird thing. Do you work on this second Donphan now in case this one gets knocked out?
Yeah, that's the thing about Focus Sash. It's really just there to help you survive and attack. And, if you force your opponent to attack your Donphan twice, usually that's a winning scenario.
Yeah, and we'll see here. Loses 2 Karina, but he already really has all the Pokemon he's going to need. That's sort of half of the strength of that card. Computer Search, however, allowed him to search for anything. So,
yeah, at this point, I think Simon just needs more energy in play. Need to start powering up that other Donphan, get a fighting or a strong energy on it. Really, one of the best things you can do with this deck is spread out your energy. Get 2 fighting energy on each Donphan, and then when you need to, just attach double colorless and use Wreck. So you'll probably go for that, or he could go for a fighting stadium.
Another stadium switch.
And then we see Versus Seeker as well. He can grab a supporter. Looks like he's going to grab N.
Yeah, just shuffle and draw. It's funny how many knockouts we've gotten, but they're all Robo-Subs.
Yeah, 0 prize cards have been taken.
That's where, normally when you go this deep into the game, an N can be pretty devastating. You're only drawing like 3 cards, 4 cards. both players are still getting the full 6.
Yeah, and it is interesting to note, we see the timer at the bottom there already at 30 minutes. We've already played 20 minutes. No prizes have been taken. This is best 2 out of 3 series, but at the pace this game is going, we may just see a 1-game series. We might not even have time for the rest of the games.
Yeah, that can happen. We do see the energy Simon really wanted on that second Don fan, so he can at least diversify his threats if one does fall. Now the question is, do you spinning turn here? Do you attack with Hawlucha?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, Flying Press would do 120 damage here, which is pretty nice. So you might want to go with that. But looks like he's just going to go for the spinning turn, which will do 80 damage.
Yeah, I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at for a single energy. And now he has the Robo Sub up, forcing Ross to have a Lysander, or he's sort of it's a pretty non-optimal attack. He can Hammerhead and deal some damage to the bench. Nope, he can't now. The stadium was switched again.
Yeah.
That's an interesting war going on. So it's like, what? He can Hammerhead and knock out a Robo Sub?
Yeah, and then your EX is in danger of being knocked out. So great play from Simon, recognizing that the stadium is very important here. Getting rid of Silent Lab, fighting stadium also allows him to do a little extra damage. So yeah, just clever plays back and forth. I do feel like Simon's deck naturally has an advantage in this matchup, but we'll see if Ross can pull something out.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody can do it, it's Ross. I know he's very good at sort of creating strategies for not conventional matchups. So that's certainly something he's thinking about. He's probably playing this matchup as well as he can. The question is, can he overcome what's already a pretty bad matchup?
Yeah, and I think the big thing here is, does Ross have a Lysander? And indeed he does. Actually going to target down the Donphan with no damage on it, since that could get a Focus Sash. So he's going to go ahead and target that down before it gets a Focus Sash attack. So he only has to use 1 attack to knock it out.
And all that has to discard all of his energy for Land's Judgment to take the knockout.
That's such an expensive attack.
1 prize card, too. You often are always using Land's Judgment to knock out EX Pokemon, grabbing 2 prize cards. Simon does not run any of those.
Yeah, but I do think that ends up being the smart play. You don't want to have to use 2 hits to knock out that Donphan, so get rid of it while you can. You also know that Simon has discarded 2 of his Donphans, so he is out of them now. You can only play 4 copies of a card in a deck. So really all Simon has left is 1 Donphan and then the Hawlucha. But I think he's already discarded a Hawlucha as well, so he won't even have 6 prizes worth of attackers in this game.
That's
unless he uses his Bunnelby to shuffle them back into his deck.
I mean, it's a possibility. I noticed both these players are playing a Bunnelby, sort of an anti-deck out card that we've seen, anti-Willord technology.
Yeah.
It's a possibility. You might have to do it in sort of the end of a long stretch. It's just a shame because one of your main goals with this deck is you force your opponent to run through 6 different Pokemon and not give them a single EX to work with to make that easier.
Yeah, but Bunnelby does have that hidden utility. You can always Rototiller and shuffle cards back into your deck. So that might be something we see a little later.
So we do at least, he's got the army of 3 Hawlucha, 1 Donphan so far. Those Hawlucha will apply a lot of damage. He has the one on the bench he's probably going to use here.
Yeah, he can Flying Press for a knockout. We'll probably see that this turn. Otherwise, you'd have to spinning turn and not do enough damage. So here comes Hawlucha, and all of a sudden we're starting to see prize cards taken. Landers EX goes down. Simon takes the lead, and I mean, now it's on Ross. He has to start doing something. If he has another Lysander, I think he would bring up Donphan here and knock it out with Gaia Volcano, since Hawlucha won't be doing enough damage to knock out his Primal Groudon.
Right. Anything to prevent that wreck possibility is going to be a good play for Ross. And he is in this weird spot. He had to give up 3 energy. Now it's like, do I throw up a wall? Do I try and build this? He does have just 1 way to attack, and that's the Primal Groudon with 4 energy on it. But if he can't knock out Donphan, then it could be knocked out. But he does have the Lysander, so probably attacking this turn, it's probably his best bet.
Yeah, and I actually saw Ross went to put down a Wobbuffet. You could probably put that down for free since it only gives up 1 prize card. Your only other Pokemon are EXs, so the math works out where the Wobbuffet is basically a free prize you could give your opponent. But he opts not to, and I think that's because he's running low on switching cards. And something that could happen is Wobbuffet could be brought out with Lysander repeatedly, and he could be in a position where he just runs out of cards because he can't retreat and attack anymore.
Yeah, it makes enough sense to me. And Gaia Volcano does discard the Stadium card, so he wants to deal the 200 again, although there are no more Donphan to deal with.
Yeah. A massive 260 damage with those 3 strong energy. That is double Donphan's HP.
This new Hawlucha in the active position actually has Focus Sash, which could make it extremely annoying, only having 70 HP, but it could survive 2 Gaia Volcanoes.
Yeah, for Simon's deck, it's all about chipping away at your opponent with small amounts of damage. Sure, you get the one big wreck eventually, but he won't even be able to do that this game. If you can get a strong energy on this Hawlucha, start doing a little bit of damage, you can start chipping away. But, at this point, Ross has put himself in a pretty good position. He has that Primal Groudon EX. There's no more Donphan to worry about. He discards Fighting Stadium with Gaia Volcano, so it's tougher for Simon to do enough damage. And if he can find those Pokemon Center Lady he plays, that's going to be pretty tough.
So, interestingly, we do see Phanpy and the double colorless energy dropped on the bench. Does he have any way to get a Donphan back into the deck?
Besides Bunnelby, I don't think so, but he could do that at some point.
And I'm sure he really wanted a fighting energy this turn. Seems frustrated by it. If you have 2 Hawluchas, you can knock out Primal Groudon EX with back-to-back flying presses. But otherwise, I'm sure he would love to abuse this Focus Sash one. Can't at the moment.
All right, so there we see Simon's 3rd Fighting Stadium, and he's going to play an N, make both players shuffle in, and Ross will go down to 4 cards, and so will Simon. But Fighting Stadium's going to be pretty big here. He can Flying Press, I think, for 80 damage again. But man, Primal Groudon has so much HP, and that Hard Charm is really making it difficult for Simon to get a knockout. And even doing 80, it's going to have, how much HP left?
I guess another
60?
Another 80?
Another 80,
yeah.
Geez.
Yeah, I know.
There's so much HP to do it.
You have to do 83 times knockout Primal Groudon. Also, it's the hard charmed one.
Yeah.
One huge card that's going to be a factor here. For a second I thought he passed the turn Ross was drawing. He was just waited before he drew. And if you can get back-to-back Hawluchas, it is a knockout with all of these additional damaging tools. He does need to find a new fighting energy next turn. But what if Ross finds his Pokemon Center Lady?
Yeah, that would be huge. But he will hit for 100 damage right here, thanks to that Fighting Stadium. That means there's 180 damage on Primal Groudon EX.
Now it's at 60. Yeah.
But yeah, Pokemon Center Lady would be a huge card for Ross to draw here. I really think this game just revolves around this Primal Groudon. If it survives, I think it ends up winning the game for Ross. If Simon can take it down, I don't think Ross has enough time to power up another one.
Yeah, 4 more energies is just too much of a commitment. And he's sort of counting, how many cards are left in my deck. Ross has drawn through quite a few.
Oh, yeah.
It's like Center Lady or bust here. Well, Center Lady or Simon misses his fighting energy.
Oh, yeah. Both those can happen, and pretty easily, actually. So, this is a point in the game where both players are running low on resources. A lot of energy cards have been used. Simon, of course, out of Donphan. Ross does find an energy card to put on another Primal Groudon, though.
Hey, it's a start.
Yeah, it does take 4 to use Gaia Volcano, but he does have that Mega Turbo at some point he could use to get some energy acceleration.
Yeah, that's at least one more, essentially, energy, because you can bring it back from the discard pile. And yep. I think Ross is realizing he maybe has enough energy to get 4 on his Primal Groudon. One question could be, though, would he deck out by that point? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I think that's what he's trying to figure out. How much time do I have left in this game? And
look at that. Look how big that discard pile is.
Yeah, we do see there was a Pokemon Center Lady in there. Also, Ross's Bunnelby is in the discard pile, so he won't have any way to get cards back. And he has to actually play Karina. That is not the supporter he wanted to use here.
No, now maybe, I guess he could do a switching card. I don't think that's what you want at this point. You have to grab the prizes, but you're at the mercy of Simon's fighting energy now. If he finds it, Hawlucha is taking this giant Primal Groudon down.
Yeah, you could do a switching card and just go into Robo Substitute, I suppose. Try to buy yourself a turn to get that Pokemon Center Lady and help that Primal Groudon survive. It can't be Lysandered out, so you can be patient. Just throw up a Robo Substitute. Decides to grab Versus Seeker. And there we go. There's the Gaia Volcano, and Hawlucha goes down. Will Simon find a fighting energy this turn?
Yeah, he needs it now.
And I mean, he has gone through a decent amount of them. He's gone through a couple strong energy, a couple fighting energy, but he should have enough left. I mean, he just needs one. He should have a few left.
All right. Well, we'll see. Yeah. What did he get off that end?
Nope.
Oh, there it is. Okay, that's a good
answer.
deal. Now, we are going to get into sort of a weird exchange after this. I was thinking about it. After Simon takes this 2-prize knockout, I'm assuming Ross will throw up a Robo Sub. Well,
Yeah.
he'll probably throw up the free retreating Groudon and retreat to Robo Sub. But does Simon have a way to knock out Robo Subs in the meantime? He doesn't have the Donphan hit and switch, and Howlucha can't touch it.
Yeah, that's going to be weird. He might have to attack with Fanpy.
Maybe that's why he threw the double colorless down on it. I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
It's a possibility.
And here we see another N, so that's going to shuffle Ross's Versus Seeker back into his deck. Might slow him down just enough for Simon to capitalize on this this momentary advantage.
Yeah, and it does at least give Simon some time. He can find another energy now on his second Hawlucha, and that one takes 2 attacks to knock out. Ross is just really struggling in this war of attrition. He's halfway there, but that second half is going to be so much harder once this Primal Groudon EX falls.
Yeah, but it's not going to be easy for Simon either. I mean, like you said, there's no way for him to knock out Robo Substitute currently. I mean, if he has to throw up a Fanpy to knock out a Robo Substitute, it's kind of an ugly spot. If Ross can find the energy to power up his second Primal Groudon, I don't know how Simon deals with that.
No, yeah. I mean,
Oh, and Ross actually concedes the game. Wow. Simon's going to take game number 1.
Well, that was pretty crazy. Like, I guess Ross realized in the long game, maybe I don't have enough turns to draw. Maybe he didn't even have enough energy. We don't know what his last 3 prize cards were.
Yeah, that's something I was going back to earlier. I mean, he committed 3 energy cards to that Landorus EX, and he only runs 11 energy in the deck. I mean, it takes 4 to power up a Primal Groudon. Maybe he had like just 1 energy prize, and if that's the case, he was trying to dig for that energy in his prizes. Maybe he didn't find it and then had to concede the game because he actually just couldn't deal damage anymore.
Yeah.